This week we've been talking about author's viewpoint as a segue into our historical fiction unit. Author's viewpoint provides an excellent place to make a transition from nonfiction, which is what we've been reading and writing, to fiction, which is what we will be going back to shortly. One of the ways that we are using author's viewpoint as a segue is through language. Tonight I've asked you to explore the subject of imagery, and so this lesson will be about imagery, purpose, and viewpoint. One of the ways to think about imagery is language. Imagery is one way in which fiction writers create a chance to connect with the reader through imagery, through taste, touch, sight, smell, sound, and to craft an opinion on the subject they're describing. For example, a historical event or a political issue or a cultural trend. And we'll look at some of these things in class together tomorrow. Let's take a look at the definition of imagery. That'll be a good place to start. Imagery is defined as visually descriptive or figurative language, a collection of visual images or visual symbolism. So you might be getting the idea that imagery is all about visual, but really it's not. There are lots of different types of imagery, but here's the deal, is that they're all concrete. Imagery is all about concrete language. Remember, this is the point at which author's viewpoint in nonfiction and author's viewpoint in fiction intersect. Imagery is all about concrete language because, first and foremost, it's about crafting sensory details through description. Taste, touch, sight, smell, and sound. Words used to convey these senses. So, for example, the cookie was warm and gooey and smelled of sweet chocolate. These are sensory details used to generate imagery about this cookie. Through this imagery, I am able to use my senses to connect to the writer, and understand that this writer enjoys cookies. That is his or her viewpoint as expressed through these sensory details. So again, sensory details are the first way in which a writer will craft imagery in a text through language. Taste, touch, sight, smell, and sound. So imagery is not just about visuals, but also about bringing these other senses in through these details. There are more complex ways to generate imagery in a text, and some of these ways provide even more opportunities to bring in the other senses. We call these figurative language. Alliteration and onomatopoeia, for example, are ways in which imagery can be generated through sound, word choice that generates a sound. So here we see language creating sound imagery in a text. Let's start with alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of a consonant sound in words that are located close to one another in a sentence. So here, while I nodded, nearly napping, we see the repetition of the N sound. The repetition of this initial sound is called alliteration, especially when the words appear near one another in a text. And well, what does alliteration do? Why does it create imagery? Well, in repeating this same sound, usually a consonant sound, it generates a sound in the text. It generates almost a musical quality. Same deal with onomatopoeia. Here our goal in using words that are also sounds is to generate noise in the text. Take a look at some of these examples and you'll see what I mean. So there are two approaches to creating sound in a text, to creating imagery in a text. Simile and metaphor are other two popular approaches to generating imagery in a text. There are two other possible building blocks, and typically we see metaphor and simile create images through comparison. But sometimes metaphor and simile can generate other things as well. It doesn't always have to be a comparison that produces an image. It can also be a comparison that produces a smell or a taste or a touch. These two examples, however, happen to be examples of both comparisons to create an image and comparisons to create a feeling. So we've just explored 5 ways to generate imagery in a text: sensory details, alliteration, onomatopoeia, metaphor, and simile. You should use these 5 approaches to help you complete the imagery assignment tonight. Good luck.